So the Battlefront Classic Collection is finally here. It's been out in Australia for roughly 24 hours now, and after probably 5 to 6 hours of playtime, I wanted to give you guys my honest opinion on the game, covering as many areas as I can, because I know a lot of people are still very much on the fence about whether or not this game is worth buying. Now, I want to explain first and foremost, I did buy the game. However, I then, on the morning of launch, actually got a review code from Aspire Media after the game was already out in Australia, because at that point it wasn't out in America, so they called it an early review code. However, I could already access the game and I'd already bought the game. So technically I've both bought this game and got a review code, and I just wanted to be transparent about that. Whenever you're doing a review and you have been given the code, it is kind of just customary to announce that. So I have been given a review code by Aspire. Thank you to Aspire for that code. But then also, to be transparent, I had already bought the game as well, and it was playable when I got the code. So just wanted to let you guys know about that. Now I'm going to kind of split this video into two different sections, those being just the positives and the negatives. I want to be as transparent as possible and just give my honest opinions. And I'm playing on PS5 for now. I may potentially get it on PC in the future, and maybe even the Switch if that ever gets a physical release or anything like that. But for now, I can only judge based off the PS5 version. Now, starting off with the positives, the first thing that I've got to say is that the game feels very, very smooth. It is obviously running at 60 frames per second, and obviously running on current day consoles, or obviously on the PC. Machines these days are so much more powerful than they were back in the day, so you would expect it to run very smoothly, and that it does. It feels as smooth and runs as well as essentially any game on the market. Obviously it doesn't look as good, so I guess in that sense not so much, but yeah, it definitely plays very smoothly. You can tell that it is in 60 frames per second, and there's no sort of frame rate issues or anything like that. Now, I have heard from Elliot, aka Battlefront Updates, that the PC version, apparently in multiplayer lobbies, there is a frame rate issue that is seemingly tied to the servers, because it's only in the multiplayer aspect, but apparently you can actually get locked to like 30 frames per second. But I haven't experienced that at all on the PS5, both in Battlefront 2004 and 2005. So yeah, so far in terms of the smoothness of the game, it is definitely very smooth. In terms of the textures as well, the textures do 100% look better than they did in the original games. Now, it's not like a proper remaster or anything like that, but they have, I believe, confirmed there is AI upscaling, which has just essentially made all of the textures just slightly better. It doesn't mean that they're actually of a higher quality. They just essentially look a little bit nicer in layman's terms. But overall, obviously, the polygons of the character models and all that kind of thing are still the same. So it's not like there's necessarily more detail in the game. Everything just kind of looks a bit crisper. Now, another positive, which is kind of in the same vein as what I've just mentioned, is to do with the load times. The load times in this game are the fastest load times I've ever experienced in any game. And again, you would kind of expect that. The game is 20 years old and it is running on PS5s and Xbox Series X's and, you know, current day PCs. You would absolutely expect the load times to be fast, but it's almost jarring how quickly they actually load. You can, from, for example, the PS5 menu, be in a multiplayer game within like 10 seconds when you haven't even opened the game yet. So that includes opening the game, choosing which game you want, whether it's Battlefront 1 or 2, searching for a game, and then loading into that game. You can genuinely do that in about 10 to 15 seconds. It's actually absurd. So yeah, props to them for that. But again, it's obviously just because this game is so old and our consoles these days are obviously a lot more powerful. Now, I just mentioned about how you can sort of pick Battlefront 2004 or 2005. I see that as both a pro and a con. The positive side of it is that, yeah, you can kind of choose which game you want to load. So you open the Battlefront Classic Collection, it then just kind of acts as a launcher, and from there you can choose which game you want to play. I think that's a pretty decent way to do it. On the flip side, it would have been cool to just have like one game that has all the content in it, because the only downside to that is that you're obviously kind of splitting the player base. So if you want to play Battlefront 2004 and your friend wants to play 2005, well then obviously that's a bit of an issue, whereas if it was just one game, you can just load into a match and it doesn't really matter. So there is kind of a pro and con to that, but I think that is probably the best way to do it. It would have been kind of too hard for them to implement the Battlefront 2004 stuff into 2005. That just obviously would have been a bit of a headache. Like I said, this isn't a proper remaster. This is essentially just porting the game to current day consoles. Another really cool positive for me is the trophies or achievements, depending on the platform you're on. It is actually really cool to have like modern day trophies and stuff for a 20-year-old game. It makes me want to play. It makes me want to try and unlock all the trophies and stuff like that, because obviously the game having no progression in terms of the multiplayer, that is something that I think most people, when we buy a multiplayer shooter, we kind of look forward to that, grinding and leveling up to unlock weapons and all that kind of thing. Some people don't love it, but I think most people kind of enjoy that because it keeps you engaged in the game. And with this game not having that, the trophies are kind of a replacement for that. Now obviously every game has trophies, so I can't praise them too much and act like this is some groundbreaking thing. It obviously isn't, but it is something that I wouldn't have been surprised if it wasn't in the game. So I am appreciative that they've actually gone and put trophies in the game, and I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun trying to get all of them. Some of them seem pretty damn tough. I had a look at them earlier, and there's some that look like they're going to be pretty frustrating to try and get, but obviously that is just part of the fun of trying to get 100% on any game you play. Now my final positive is essentially just to do with the single player side of the game as a whole. I think it honestly feels pretty much perfect. There's not that much about the single player side of it. So, you know, instant action, galactic conquest, and the campaign and stuff like that. All of that feels pretty much perfect to me. It just feels like they have literally taken the original games, put them in 60 frames per second, made it look just a little bit better, and presented it in a nice package. And that's what we all expect. I think that's what we all want. And for the single player side of things, that is definitely what we have received. So yeah, that side of things is definitely very positive. Like I said, the game feels and plays pretty damn well, especially considering it is, yeah, a 20-year-old game at this point. Now that actually leads me directly into the negatives, because the single player side of things is a positive, but unfortunately for me, the multiplayer game as a whole essentially is a negative. I've probably clocked up 4 or so hours, I would say maybe 3.5 to 4 hours of multiplayer action so far, and I'm not gonna lie, how I would describe it so far, and this is obviously day 1, so let's just hope they can patch a lot of this stuff, but how I would describe it is, unfortunately, the multiplayer is just not enjoyable, and I'm going to go into the reasons why I actually find it not enjoyable. Now, before I get into those negatives, I have mentioned it before, but if you guys didn't know, I have released a Battlefront themed merch design. It is the Just Like the Simulations merch. That is currently live, and it will be going down at the end of March, just so Mickey Mouse does not come chasing after me. So if you guys are interested, be sure to check the link in the description. Like I said, it will be taken down at the end of March, so make sure you don't miss out on that. But with that being said, let's get back into the video. Now, like I said, there is honestly a lot of issues with the multiplayer side of things, and it is honestly really disappointing for me. This is the part that I was looking forward to. I can play the single player side of it on the original games. I don't need a new updated version. The reason I bought this game was to play the multiplayer aspect. As of recording this, now I'm sure I will get back into it, but as of recording this, I honestly almost have no interest in going back to multiplayer, and that sounds pretty damn dramatic and probably sounds very negative, but unfortunately that is how I feel after probably 4 hours of playing the game. It is so rough. The actual gameplay, like I said, the single player game, if you're playing it offline and stuff, it feels really good. It feels exactly how it did in the base game. I haven't found really any issues there, but when it comes to multiplayer, there are a lot of just multiplayer related issues that for me are essentially game breaking and make me just not want to play multiplayer whatsoever. Now, the first thing, and this is actually to do with single player too, what the hell is this loading screen? I just need to get this out of the way. Listen to this. Now, if you guys played the original, you probably feel physically ill after hearing that intro or the loading screen. That is not what it used to sound like. That is one of the most iconic screens in gaming, whether it's a loading screen, whether it's a menu, whether it is literal gameplay. The Battlefront 1 loading screen is, for me personally, the most iconic and nostalgic thing in video games, and they have essentially gone and butchered it. I don't know why they changed it. I don't know if it's a bug, because it is kind of like slowed down compared to the original, so I don't know if that's just bugged audio. I hope it is, because I don't know why they would ever change that. And it is a loading screen, so at the end of the day, who cares? It doesn't actually affect the game, but I'm sure you guys who played the original will know how iconic that is, and it's kind of just something that is more annoying, and it makes me feel just kind of disappointed. Why would you ever change that? That is one of the most iconic things of all time. So take that with a grain of salt. It doesn't affect the game. It is just something that it kind of just annoyed me straight off the bat. Why change things when they don't need to be changed? Now, speaking of audio, this is where the main issue comes in for me with multiplayer, and I had this I think once or twice maybe in the single player, but it is obviously more important in multiplayer. The audio seems to be bugged. Now, what I mean by that is that from what I can tell, the audio is actually switched, so you hear your left ear audio out of your right ear and vice versa. I initially thought this was an issue with maybe my OBS settings, maybe to do with my PlayStation, or even just my entire PC. I've had that happen before where my entire PC just randomly swapped the audio, but I did fix that and I double checked that because that's initially what I thought it was. It is not my PC. It is not, as far as I can tell, my PlayStation. The tests I did for that was just doing a left and right audio test on the PC. It worked perfectly. I could hear the left audio out of the left ear of my headset, and then I could hear the right audio out of the right ear. So that ruled out that it was the PC being the issue. I then went and played the finals, and I just tested the audio, heard someone shooting to my left, and looked, and they were on my left. So it doesn't seem to be the PlayStation, and therefore it seems as though, unfortunately, this bug is just in the Battlefront Classic Collection. So this one is kind of a big issue now. It's, at the end of the day, this game is not meant to be like a sweaty video game. It's meant to be mindless fun, running around shooting people. So if the audio is a little bit dodgy, it doesn't really matter, in that this is not a competitive game, but it is very off-putting. I can hear like a droideka to my left. I turn to my left, and then all of a sudden I can hear the droideka in front of me, but there's no one there. Then I turn around and I can see the droideka, but I can hear it behind me, and it's just very off-putting. And obviously if you're trying to get some kills and stuff, then yeah, it's just very, very frustrating. So that is kind of the main issue for me personally. Another issue that I have is that every time, or at least on certain maps, every time you respawn and it takes you to, you know, selecting the spawn point you want or the command post that you want to spawn at, it just absolutely bugs out. I'm sure you guys can see here, this is not meant to be happening. This screen is absolutely tripping out. And again, it doesn't like ruin the game. It's not affecting the gameplay, but it's just annoying. It's the same sort of thing as the loading screen. It's like, why is that happening? That should not be happening. So yeah, those two things combined with the audio, it's kind of annoying. Another issue that I have with the multiplayer is that the games of Conquest, and I've found this more so with the Battlefront 2 multiplayer rather than the Battlefront 2004, the games are lasting, I shit you not, 1 to 2 minutes. I have a recording here of one of the games that I played that I started recording when I loaded into the game, and I stopped recording when the victory screen showed up. This recording was 1 minute and 12 seconds long. That is how long that game went for. That should not be happening, and obviously it can happen in really any game, because if you capture all the command posts, then the 20-second timer starts counting down and you can obviously win. So this isn't like a bug, this is just to do with the balancing of the game. And unfortunately for me, from the hours of gameplay that I've got, I just went and looked before recording, and the average game length for me is roughly 3 to 4 minutes right now. So that is kind of dodgy to me. I feel as though that's not how it used to be in the old games. Generally with any multiplayer shooter, I feel like, I don't know, 8 to 15 minutes is generally the sweet spot. Games like Call of Duty, for example, can last 7 to 8 minutes. Games like Battlefield or Battlefront 2, as in the EA version, can, you know, last 15 to even sometimes 20 minutes or more. Games should not be lasting 3 minutes, and obviously, like I said, in one case, literally 1 minute. That is the most absurd thing that I think I've ever experienced in any multiplayer game. And again, this game is not meant to be some like super AAA refined competitive multiplayer shooter. That's not what it is. That's not what I expected. I expected just a game where I could run around and have fun shooting people, but it's kind of hard to do that when the game is just over before you literally end up with like 2 kills and then the game ends. It's just kind of weird. And again, these little issues just add up. If that was the only issue and everything else is perfect, that would be fine. I'd still prefer longer games, but if that was the only issue, then fair enough. But all of these little issues combined, it starts getting a little bit frustrating for me. Now, the final issue to do with multiplayer, and I did say the audio was probably the biggest issue, but this for me, now that I think of it, is the biggest issue. The actual like net code of the game and, you know, stuff like the hit registration and all that kind of thing is pretty damn terrible. Now, I don't know if this is just because it's day one and there's like a lot of people online or something. I'm not too sure. It seems as though just random things happen. I was just walking around at one point as a Wookiee and literally just flew into the air as if I'd been blown up by a grenade, but there was no one near me. There was no mine on the ground. Nothing happened. I just walked, got blown into the air by absolutely nothing, and then died. And that's obviously just one example of what goes wrong. If that happens once ever, then who cares? It's kind of funny. If it happens every game, which it kind of is, not that exact situation, but just random things happening, that obviously makes the game a little bit unplayable. I want to just be able to go to the objective and shoot at the enemies and try and win the games and stuff like that. That's all I want to do. And then just being able to walk out of a building and just get blown into the air by nothing. That is obviously very, very frustrating. There's also a lot of issues with stuff like hit registration, which again, it's a 20-year-old game. I'm not expecting modern mechanics, but I would expect in 2024 that when I'm playing a multiplayer game, where I'm looking and where I'm shooting, the bullets, or in this case, the blaster bolts, actually go where I'm looking. I've had times where I'm like pretty much point blank from someone and shooting them and nothing happens whatsoever. They then shoot me like 3 times and I die. And I don't think this is a ping issue, because most of the lobbies that I've been in have been Aussie servers, and you can check the connection and it will literally say everyone's on like the 5-bar green connection. So it could just be an internet issue, but yeah, I don't often lag in multiplayer games unless I've just had the worst day of internet and I didn't realize. Then it just seems like this is just to do with the netcode of the game, and that is obviously a big L when multiplayer is what most of us kind of bought this game for. So right now it just feels as though the multiplayer side of the game is a bit of a mess, and like I said, I'm sure I will go back and play it, but right now I've just been playing for a few hours kind of on and off. I played for probably 2 hours, got kind of annoyed at it and got off and did a bit of work, and then jumped back on for another 2 hours or so after streaming mostly just like single player stuff this morning for another 2 hours. And honestly, after the most recent 2 hours that I played, which was all multiplayer, the feeling I have in this very moment is I just don't really want to do that again. There's so many other games to play right now. I'm playing Final Fantasy. Dragon's Dogma 2 comes out next week. There are other multiplayer games that I want to play, and this just does not make me want to play this game, unfortunately. I definitely will put more time into the single player because it's so much fun and it's a bit of a throwback, and overall I think the game is solid on that side of things. The port in terms of the offline modes feels very good, but like I said, when it comes to multiplayer, which is why I bought the game, unfortunately, it just feels really all over the place. And I don't know if this is, maybe I've just had bad luck. Maybe some of these bugs are just exclusive to just me and not everyone's going to run into these. For example, that audio bug, maybe you guys won't get that, and maybe that is just me. And if that's the case, then it's probably not as bad as I'm sort of making it out to be. But yeah, it definitely doesn't look great right now. And I know that's not what you guys want to hear. It's not what I want to be saying. I just want to play this game and have fun. But unfortunately, right now, I would probably go as far as saying the multiplayer is just simply not fun at all. With that being said, I hope that they do fix some of this stuff. I'm sure some of it is fixable. The only issue that I have is that Aspire Media is not some big AAA company. This is not a AAA shooter that is going to get balance patches every week and stuff. That's just not going to happen. I'd imagine there'll be like one patch to fix any genuine game-breaking issues, and outside of that, I don't see them really fixing a lot of stuff. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. I hope that they can just get it to a playable state. If they get rid of the netcode issues and stuff like that, like I said, the single player side of the game would translate well to multiplayer. It's just that right now it sort of doesn't. So we're gonna have to wait and see. I'm trying not to be too negative about it because the actual gameplay itself is completely fine, and the multiplayer stuff in terms of the netcode and all that kind of thing hopefully can be fixed. It could even just be like server overload from being the first day. So we're gonna have to wait and see, but like I said, I wanted to be completely honest with you guys and give my honest opinion on the game. Do I think it's worth buying? If you're buying it just for multiplayer, I would wait. I would honestly wait. I will probably do a follow-up to this if they do put out a patch or something like that. If you're buying it just for a throwback, it's very much worth it. The single player side of things is really fun, just like it was in the original games. It definitely feels smoother. It definitely looks a little bit better. It is nice having both games in one file, and it's just a good way to preserve the game. You've now got like a bundle that has both of those classics in it. So if you don't really care too much about multiplayer, I'd still say it's worth it. If multiplayer is all you were buying it for, hold on, wait a couple of weeks and just see what happens. You might be able to save yourself 35 bucks, or it might get fixed and then you can jump in anyway. So that is my honest opinion on the Battlefront Classic Collection. Let me know in the comments for those of you who have played if you're having any of these issues as well. And for those who haven't played, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on, you know, what you think of the game so far from what you've seen, both this video and anyone else's that you've watched. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.